historical context. In other words, that this conversation between this love songs and love story between the man and woman are really taking place over the generations, and we're looking back to episodes of the great love, and we're looking toward the future, but it's more in the historic sense. And then we're also looking at more Kabbalistic and Hasidic commentators, which discuss how this is not just in the historic collective Jewish people's story with God, but it also is related to every individual soul's relationship with God. And every individual soul's relationship with God has those ups and downs that make a good and complicated love story. So we began last week. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to discuss a little bit of last week. And we talked about introduction. We said Shir HaShirim, this is the song of all songs. And one interpretation we offered, we said that, there's multiple songs. And generally speaking, there's two levels of love. That was two levels of love, which represents each level of love as a different song. And then we offered another interpretation, which says that all songs, all longing, all yearning, all love in this world comes from the one original song. What's the one original song? And the language of the Kabbalah, it's Malchut, the divine energy which descends to give life to the world. And there is a little bit of Malchut in every single creation because there's a divine energy in every single creation. So the source of all the energy that creates the world, Malchut, longs to go back to its source and unite with the other Sfirot. That is the longing. And that is the song of Malchut. We mentioned last week, there's a verse from King David, honor should sing to you continuously and never be silent. Psalm 30. And the Kabbalists explain that there's always a song in the universe. You always have that Malchut yearning to go to its source. And therefore there's 7 billion people and everybody's yearning for something. And everybody's yearning for something, other things, and are valid. But at the root, if you want to know what's the deepest yearning, what's the source of all yearning, is the energy wants to go back to its source. The soul wants to reconnect with its source, which the soul is like the bride and the source is like the groom. And that's the song that's behind all songs, at the root of all songs. So that was by way of introduction about the songs. And we also began to discuss the verse 2, which we mentioned that verse 2 also could be read in different forms. Yishakeni minashikot pihu, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. We mentioned the traditional, the Rashi's interpretation, historic interpretation is that now the Jewish people are in exile. And while we are in exile, we want God to kiss us the way he has kissed us in the past. What does that mean? So we mentioned last week that God kissing us means face to face. We want to kiss from the kisses of his mouth. We want face to face. What is face to face? Face to face is open and clear revelation. When did we have that experience? We had that experience at Sinai. As you mentioned last week, Moses says, Panim bepanim diber Hashem imachem. God spoke to you face to face. In other words, clear revelation, no intermediaries, no metaphors, no prophecy, but direct revelation. And now we say we want God. Now when we're in exile, we're saying we want God to kiss us of the kisses of his mouth. In other words, God should once again kiss us, reveal himself to us face to face. And Rashi continues and says, when is that going to be? There's going to be revelation of deeper Torah, not a different Torah, where that's the difference between Judaism and other faiths. We're not waiting for the Second Testament. We have the Old Testament. It's good enough. If it was good for then, it's good for now. But the point is the secrets of the Torah, so tameh, the hidden reasons of the Torah. That is going to be in the times of Mashiach, that will be revealed to us. And that's what Rashi says. We know we were promised that God will once again come and kiss us. God will once again come and reveal the mysteries of the Torah. It's the same Torah he gave us that time, but then it was only the revealed part. The mysteries have not been revealed. Now we know that the Kabbalah begins to give us a taste of the Torah, the teachings of the Mashiach. And that's why, one of the reasons why the Hasidic movement took the Kabbalistic ideas and makes them popular, because we have to get ready for the time of Mashiach when the secrets of the Torah will be revealed. and today is Friday, so I'm already thinking about the food. But there is a halachical, there's a halacha, there's a law in the code of Jewish law that Friday afternoon you're actually supposed to taste of the tastes of Shabbat to get you in the mood. You can't just prepare spiritually, but you come into the kitchen, you taste a little of the cholent, a little of the dips. You taste the food to get you into the mood. That's a law in the code of law. They quote a verse from Book of Psalms again. Those who taste it merit life. So simple meaning is talking about taste it means the taste of wisdom. But the code of law says no, it means those who taste the food of Shabbat, they taste it on Friday afternoon. So spiritually speaking, we are now Friday afternoon. We are now the 7th millennium. The 7th is the day, this Shabbat, that's the time of Mashiach. We're in the year 5,000, whatever, I can't remember the year, 5,780. So if you want to think about it, we're in the 6th millennium, we're almost Shabbat. We're Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoon, we get to taste the tastes of Mashiach, and that's the secrets of the Kabbalah. So that's all from that Rashi, which Rashi says, Yishakeni, we want God, that while the people are in exile, they remember that God kissed them in the past, that their lover kissed them in the past. And we long and we say, let him come and kiss us again from the kisses of his mouth. Why? Because your love is sweeter than wine, is better than wine. And we're going to discuss that verse as well. So that is all by way of introduction and by way of summary from last week. If anybody has any comments, questions, please share. Otherwise, we proceed not to the next verse, but to another dimension of verse number 2. So we'll open up verse number 2, we'll read it again, and then look at the other dimensions, because we still have a lot to unpack in this verse. What does it mean your love is better than wine? What is wine? What is love? What's better than what? There's different elements in the relationship. Apparently one is better than the other. And which one, what are we talking about? Well, the answer is, of course, as always, it depends who you ask. So it depends what dimension you want to discuss. Okay. Okay, so we'll share I'm going to share the screen just for a moment. Not for a moment. I'm saying it will take me a moment. In the good old days before I broke my foot, I could sit in Chabad and I have multiple screens and everything is sweet. Now we have to share the screen, so it's a little bit more complicated and everything takes a little slower. But here we go. So this is the verse again. Yishakeni, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Okay, so that's so far we gave the historic dimension that, again, according to Rashi, that we were promised that God kissed us in the past. God wants to kiss us in the future. Okay, and God will come and kiss us in the future as well. So that is the Rashi's interpretation, historic. Now we move to another interpretation, which is Kabbalistic, not Chabad philosophy, but it's a great commentator. His name was the Malbim. That was the acronym of his name. 19th century. He was influenced by the Kabbalah and the Hasidic movement, but he was not Chabad. He lived, I believe, he ultimately reached Romania, and that's where he wrote his work on the Torah and on, I think, all of Tanakh. And it's a very beautiful interpretation. And he has a great interpretation of the Song of Songs. We're not going to go into this full interpretation because he thinks it's a developing story, and there's 5 stages in Solomon's life, which correspond to 5 stages in everybody's life. But again, we're not really looking at the whole Song of Songs. We're focusing on the verses that we have Hasidic commentary on. So I'm just taking from him just to show a little bit of the contrast, what he does and what the Chabad philosophy does, which just makes it more interesting. But his interpretation is absolutely brilliant. And here you'll see case in point. So let him kiss me with the kisses of my mouth, says the Malbim. What are we talking about? This is a metaphor. What's the metaphor? So according to the Malbim, what's happening here is as follows. There is a barrier. Okay, we got to read a little bit of 3 just to get into the Malbim. Because of the fragrance of your goodly oils, your name is oil poured forth. Therefore, the maidens loved you. Okay, a lot to unpack. We're just going to try to stay focused here. The guy has good perfume. That's what's happening here, right? He says, the fragrance of your goodly oils, the fragrance of your oils is good. your name is oil poured forth, whatever that means. Therefore, the maidens loved you. All the girls are in love with you. Why? Because of the fragrance of your oils. Now, remember, today you buy perfume. In the olden days, the perfume was oil. They would cook oil with herbs, various herbs and spices, and that's how they got the perfume. And they would put the oil on the skin, and that was the perfume. So what's happening here is the girl is praising the man or the young man and saying, your fragrance, the smell of your perfume is so beautiful. Therefore, all the maidens love you. Everybody loves you, not just me. And it could be she's saying that, it's not clear what she's saying that everybody's competing for his love. We'll get to that later. But but the new ingredient here, in verse 2, we have kisses. In verse 3, we have oil, we have fragrance, we have perfume. So now the Malbim says something brilliant. What the Malbim says is, she is yearning, she's saying, please kiss me, which means now they can't kiss. Why can't they kiss? Because there's a barrier. But what she could do is she could smell the fragrance of his oil. She could smell his perfume because smell could travel beyond the barrier. And we'll see later in the song that there's back and forth. Sometimes he comes to knock at her door and she's not ready. Sometimes she's looking for him and he's not available. So there's this tension between they want to connect, but they're not sure how and when. But at this point, she is saying, there's a barrier, there's a wall. I smell you, because smell could travel. I smell you, but there's a barrier and we cannot connect face to face and we cannot kiss. And that's the metaphor. That's what verse 2 and 3 are saying, according to the Malbim. And in a moment, we're going to talk about what that means spiritually. So there is the lover, who, as we discussed last week, is not clear. Is it the king? Is it a shepherd? And maybe both. In other words, maybe the king is the shepherd, but there's this lover behind the door, outside the door. The lover doesn't want to come inside for whatever reason. She can't go out for whatever reason. She says, I smell your fragrance. Why don't you come in? We have to kiss, but I can't. There's this barrier that cannot be overcome, but I smell you. In other words, I know you're here, but I don't have that essential connection, the face-to-face kiss. Very beautiful story. Right? Again, Rashi talks about historic. This is, and the Malbim is going to say, no, this is your soul connecting to God and feeling that there's the barrier. We can't kiss, but I could smell. Okay. How does the Malbim explain this in the spiritual sense? Says the Malbim as follows. There's the soul. And then there's the soul is the soul is the woman, and the soul yearns for the man. Who's the man? God. The problem is there's a wall, there's a barrier. What's the barrier? Anybody? What's the barrier that stops us connecting from God, feeling a close connection to God? The barrier is the fact that we are living in a physical world in a material body. At least you're going to say that, right?
Yeah.
Good. So that we in other words, when the soul was spiritual in heaven, it's very easy for it to connect to God. But when the soul descends into the body, now everything that the soul experiences is filtered through the physical reality. So even when the soul wants to think about God, it can only think about God in human terms, in physical terms. So the soul, there's a real barrier from the soul really connecting to God face to face. And that's what the soul is yearning for. Now, so there's this barrier, the barrier exists. Now there's two ways to connect, according to the Malbim. There is the kissing and there is the fragrance of the oil. And we don't have one, but we have the other. So we have the fragrance, but we don't have the kiss. And kiss is greater than fragrance because kiss is face to face. The fragrance could be traveling a block away. So what does the Malbim say? The Malbim says there's two ways you can overcome the barrier. There's two ways you can connect to God despite the fact that you have a physical body and everything everything that the soul feels, at least the conscious soul, is filtered through the physical and human experience. So how do you overcome this barrier? So there's two ways. Number one is intelligence. Number two is prophecy. In other words, what does intelligence mean? Intelligence means even though I can't see it, but I can understand, I can think abstractly and to understand that although I can't see God in the physical senses, I understand that there's an energy that creates the world. I can't define it, but I understand. And the mind helps you overcome the barrier of the physical. You can't see God with your physical eyes. You can't sense God the way you've sensed my cup of coffee here, right? But the mind, the intelligence, has the ability to overcome and bridge that gap. And the Malbim says that is the definition of that's the definition of fragrance. Why? Because it connects you, but it's not an intimate connection. What's the intimate connection? What is a kiss? Says the Malbim is prophecy. Because prophecy is an experience. I can't tell you what it is. I wasn't there. I never experienced it. But in Jewish literature, there's something called Ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit. And sometimes righteous people, they have a sense. They have a sense that something's going to happen, and they say it's going to happen, and it's called Ruach HaKodesh, the divine spirit. So when we were kids, we would ask my father, something like, what's happening? When is it happening? What's going to happen? He says, look, I have the Ruach HaKodesh, but I'm not spending it on this. That's what he would say. So I'm different. I don't have prophecy, so I can't exactly explain to you what it is. But we understand that the concept of prophecy is an experience, like Moses says, face to face, he spoke to God. If you experience prophecy, there's no barrier. You're overcoming the physical, the filtration to the physical body. It's an experience that becomes real, just like something that's physical is real. So says the Malbim what the soul is yearning for. She says, yes, I have intelligence. Yes, I can smell you. Yes, I overcome the barrier of physicality through my intelligence. But what I really want Sinai. What is Sinai? I really want prophecy. And that's what the soul of Solomon is yearning for. And by extension, the soul of every person is yearning for, according to the Malbim. And the reason why I'm bringing the Malbim, number one, because he's beautiful. And number two, because to contrast that with what Chabad Hasidism was going to say, and you see how it flips everything on its head, as usual, but that's why we're here. Okay, I'm going to try to translate the Malbim only because he's very poetic, and I'm going to fail. Okay, so I'm warning you in advance, but what am I going to do? I can only do the best I can do. Says the Malbim as follows: Yishakain, may him kiss me. The lover, sees his beloved, which is the soul of Solomon, but the lover is waiting behind the wall. What is the wall? The wall is the materialism and the body, which separates the soul and her lover God. She feels him through the fragrance of the oil, and she desires and she says, kiss me from the kisses of your mouth. Meaning, the way the soul understands could be in one of two ways. Number one, understanding the greatness of God through intelligence and analysis and investigation. That's number one. Number two is there's a greater form of knowledge, which is alluded to as a kiss. And that is when the people who love each other come face to face with a great yearning. And that's the time when Hashem pours his spirit on the souls who are prepared for prophecy. And the Holy Spirit, I mentioned, Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit is poured, Hashem pours the Holy Spirit on the souls, and then the soul transcends its physicality, and it unites with the divine intelligence and with the Holy of Holies, et cetera, et cetera. He continues, this is the part that I quoted from him. Bottom line is, there's the fragrance, which is wonderful. I smell you, you smell great, but I don't see you, right? The smell means I walk into the house, I don't know what's for supper. I don't see the food, but the fragrance comes and greets me. So it goes through the barrier. So I could smell God, meaning I have a relationship, but it's in the distance. It's not real. I can't see it. And then there's the face-to-face. And again, the Malbim says the face-to-face, the fragrance is the intelligence, understanding the greatness of God, understanding the existence of God, understanding the transcendent nature of spirituality and divinity. But that's limited. It's not really an intimate knowledge. You don't really connect. It's not face to face. It's the thinking. Exactly. And then there is what I really want. What does my soul really want? It wants the kiss. What's the kiss? Rashi calls it the giving of the Torah. Malbim calls it prophecy. Same idea, because at the giving of the Torah was the prophecy. Okay, that's it. That's what you had before you study Hasidic philosophy. Now we're going to start studying Hasidic philosophy and see how it's something radically different. It's like everything is flipped on its head. So this is why I think this is fun. Okay, so far you agree prophecy is better than intelligence. Intelligence is better than prophecy. What do you want? Do you want a kiss? Do you want the fragrance? Whatever you want. You want perfume? Whatever you want. These are the options. Okay. So what does Hasidic philosophy say? Okay, ready? Ready for the fun. Here we go. Going back to the verse. Because of the fragrance of your oils, I'm sorry, we're still in verse 2. We're not going to get to the fragrance until the Chabad interpretation will leave fragrance for next time. We're still in verse 2. Let him kiss me of the kisses of his mouth. Why? For your love is greater than wine. So, what's your love? And what is wine? So we'll start with wine. From the Chabad perspective, wine is revelation and joy. That's what wine represents. First of all, wine brings joy. King David says, "Yayin samach levav enosh." Wine brings joy to the human heart. Now, that's not if you drink too much, but that's the function of wine. Whenever the sages say you should make a blessing over wine, Shabbat, holiday, at a wedding, they're trying to introduce the element of joy. As King David says in the book of Psalms, like I mentioned, wine represents joy. Wine also represents revelation for multiple reasons. One is the Talmud says, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod. Wine enters, the secrets come out. Right? If you really want to get somebody's secrets, you give them some wine, and all the secrets start coming out. And that's in the physical sense. And so Kabbalistically, it's the same thing. Wine represents the revelation. And revelation, so I said two things. I said wine represents revelation and joy. But they're not two different things. They're two sides of the same coin. Revelation equals joy. When a person is sad, a person is to themselves. A person wants to stay alone. A person wants to stay in bed. When a person is joyous, they're flowing outward. They want to connect. They want to connect to others. They want to reveal. So joy and revelation is really two sides of the same coin. So wine is revelation. Besides the fact, another dimension is that even the physical wine, how was wine created or manufactured? The wine is within the grape. And you literally have to squeeze the grape to let the inner secrets of the wine to come out. So when the Talmud says wine, when you put in wine, secrets come out, also the physical process of creating the wine is similar, where that you have to actually take out the secret. The hidden secret within the grape is the wine. So wine represents revelation and joy. Says Rabbi Shneur Zalman, there's something greater than wine. What is wine? Wine is the revelation and joy, the joy that comes from the revelation and understanding of godliness. Anything you can perceive, either prophecy or understanding, that's wine. According to the Kabbalah, wine is also represents a level of bina, level of understanding. It's chachma and bina, wisdom and understanding. Wine is understanding for many reasons, mainly for the two reasons that I mentioned before, that bina, wine is revelation, and revelation brings to joy. So according to Hasidic philosophy and Kabbalah, wine is alluded to is synonymous with understanding. Understanding the greatness of God would lead to joy, which is why that was the idea of the pouring of the libation of wine on the altar. That's introducing the idea of joy that comes from understanding godliness. And I would say that the wine would include either the understanding or the prophecy that the Malbim is talking about. However, there is something that's greater than wine, something that's greater than revelation. What is greater than revelation? So Rabbi Shneur Zalman says, your love, but not the revealed love. It's the essential love. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to verse 3. But in short, that's going to be the bond that you get with God through doing a mitzvah on this earth. That's greater than wine. So when we are in heaven, when we are in Gan Eden, when we are in paradise, the soul gets pleasure and benefit from understanding the greatness of God and experiencing the greatness of God. So it's a very pleasurable experience. It's like going to the pub. It's like going to the what he calls in this book, Beis Mishteh Hayayin, the house of the wine. Instead of having Starbucks where you get together to drink coffee, in the ancient world you got together to drink a wine. So that's a place of pleasure, and that's heaven. And he says heaven is wonderful, but better than heaven from the Hasidic perspective, what the soul really wants is the soul wants to feel, not that I understand you, not that I get pleasure from understanding you, but I want to feel one with you. I want a kiss face to face. I want to feel one. How do I feel one? That's your love. Your love is defined here, as we will explain in verse 3, because according to Chabad philosophy, verse 3 is an elaboration of verse 2, that there is the fragrance and there's the essence is the Torah and the mitzvot, the way they are in this world. So why do I think this is so fascinating? Because the real question is, what does the soul really want? There's layered here. In a relationship, there's many things. I love you. I want to go out with you. I want to go golfing with you. I want to become one with you. It's multifaceted, multi-leveled. The question is, what's the core? What's the essence? What do I really want? What's at the deepest root of my desire? So according to the Malbim, when the Malbim reads the Song of Songs and says, what does the soul really want? The soul wants prophecy. The soul wants to experience God. It wants to feel one with God. Consistent with Chabad perspective, which is the primacy of action, when you do a mitzvah, even if you don't understand the value of the mitzvah, but when you do the mitzvah, the actual action is where you essentially connect to God in a deeper way, and we can elaborate upon that. Consistent with that, Rabbi Shneur Zalman says no. What's great, everything we've been talking about, how the soul wants to connect to God and enjoy the pleasure of the experience, prophecy, that's wine. We're saying your love, the bond, the connection is deeper than wine. What's the connection of mitzvah? Now, the problem with the mitzvah is it's physical. So we don't always feel and we don't always see how this connects us to God, right? So there's no wine. It's the opposite of wine. Wine is revelation. But when you do the mitzvah, you don't always feel connected. I'll make a confession. Not every time I put on tefillin do I feel like I'm one with God. Or do I feel like ecstasy and the prophecy? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes more than others. But it's not necessarily. The mitzvah works even if you don't feel and experience the bond. However, what does the soul really want? The soul wants to feel like one. And where do you like one? Not when you understand the other person. That's wine. It's nice to drink wine. But to be one with the other person, then you need dodecha, your love, which is greater than wine, greater than revelation. So I think this is beautiful because I showed the simple meaning, I showed the Kabbalistic of the Malbim, and then Chabad philosophy, which has a different twist. Richard was going to ask something. Richard, please go ahead. And then Vicky, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, thanks, Rabbi. Just a quick question. I understand through some readings that God is in a part of the soul already. So if that's true, then the soul's already connected to God.
That's a good question. Why did you say it's a short question?
Oh, I don't know.
God is in everything, meaning to say God creates everything. There's a divine energy creating me. There's a divine energy creating you. There's a divine energy creating the table. And there's a divine energy creating everything. However, that doesn't mean that I am God. That doesn't mean the table is God. That doesn't mean that you're God, right? Just because it's the divine energy creating you doesn't mean I could bow down to you. Why not? And pray to you. Why not? Because of course there's a divine energy within you creating you, but that's not you. That's the creative power that creates you. You and your consciousness, you're separate and apart. You're a creator, not a creation. You're a creation, not a creator. Now, you yearn for the creator. Now, sometimes you're satisfied with a little bit of energy of God that's within you, what the Kabbalah would call Mimale Kol Almin, the divine energy that fills all the worlds. You have a little bit of a divine energy that creates you, and you're very comfortable. And you love God because God gives me life, like we discussed last week. However, ultimately, your soul wants more because your soul doesn't want the little ray of light of God that creates you. Your soul senses, your soul also has a part of God, but the soul is a little ray. It wants to connect to what the Kabbalah would call Sovev Kol Almin, the light that transcends all the world, the infinity of God. So I'm saying two things. Number one, I'm saying your consciousness and your created being is not the soul within you. So you yearn for your soul. and you yearn for the root of your soul. But even your soul, which is the divine energy that's within you, it yearns to connect to the infinite light of God. It is only a ray of God, not the infinite light. And that's what we discussed last week. I didn't say it in these terms, but that's what we mentioned last week, where Malchut, the divine energy that descends to create all the worlds, meaning in the language of the Kabbalah, it's the root of Memale Kol Almin. It's the root of the light, of the limited light that descends and enters every creation to create it according to its limited properties. The source of all that is called Malchut, the lowest of the 10 Sfirot. That energy yearns all day long and says, I want to connect to my source, to the infinite light, not even infinite, to the 10 Sfirot, which is more infinite. That's not even infinite. There's higher levels of infinity. It's Keter. But in any case, even the divine energy yearns to connect to the transcendent light of God. And it does, and all week it's yearning. On Shabbat is when it goes back up, and then Yom Kippur it goes to higher levels, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a long answer. We need 6 weeks, but at least this is hopefully a little clarification.
A little bit, yeah. Just because I just concerned because, from my understanding, that since God is in every soul, a little bit of, like you say, the ray is in the soul already. So the soul wants to connect more.
Yes. The more you have, the more you want. The more you sense God, the more you want to connect. Or little ray. Think about the infinite difference between. Imagine the difference between. I'm not a mathematician, but if you can figure out, if you have one little ray of the sun entering your room, because your shades are closed and there's only one ray entering, calculate what's the comparison between that one ray and all the energy in the sun, right? It's not infinite, but it's not in comparison. And that little ray compared to all the energy of the sun, the gap, in other words, the connection, the distinction between your soul and the divine infinite energy of God is much more vast, because that's infinite, right? So the limited ray of the sun, the limited ray of God, wants to connect and transcend and lose itself in the overwhelming infinite light of God. So the soul is always yearning, which is why, by the way, why we're yearning. So we always yearning. People think we're yearning because we want the latest car and we want the latest model of the Apple phone. And that's why when the new Apple phone comes out, people are lining up around the block, because everyone's yearning for something. And we think the next item is going to satisfy us, right? But what's the truth? We read last week, Shir HaShirim, what's the song of all songs? What's the underlying yearning that we try to satisfy with other forms of pleasure, but it never works? So ultimately, what we really want is we want to connect to the infinite light. Now, how do you connect? So the Malbim defines it. We want prophecy. We want Mashiach to come. We want prophecy. We want to experience godliness. What does Rabbi Shneur Zalman says? No, don't get distracted. That's wonderful. That's wine. That's pleasure. That's entertainment. But that's not what we really want. What we really want is to become intimately one with God. How do you do that? Through a mitzvah, physical mitzvah in this world. But it doesn't feel like anything. I don't feel inspired. Okay, that's why it's not wine. It's not wine, but it's unity. And we're going to elaborate upon that in the next verse and explain the difference between the oil and the fragrance. And we're going to discuss that when we get to the next verse, verse 3. But that's the big idea. The big idea here is, what do I really want? What does the soul really want? So up to Chabad philosophy, up to Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the soul wants prophecy. That's Rashi says that, and the Malbim says that. Each one says it in his own words. Rashi is talking historic. We had the kiss, we had prophecy at Sinai, and we want it again. And that's what Rashi says. And the Malbim says, in the individual soul, the soul of Solomon, which is the soul of my soul too, it says, I understand godliness. I have the fragrance, right? The metaphor is there's the wall, and I smell my lover on the other side of the wall. I smell God. I can connect intellectually, but I don't feel that oneness and connection. I don't feel that intimate connection until I get the kiss, and the kiss is prophecy. I really want prophecy. I may not get it till Mashiach comes. Rabbi Shneur Zalman says, no. You what your soul really wants, doesn't want the wine. I mean, wine is fun. It wants wine too. But what it really wants, what's better than wine, what's better than understanding and feeling close connection, the joy that comes from feeling close connection to God, is the actual union, the actual intimacy. And that happens through a mitzvah. And more information about the physical mitzvah, even though it's not wine, it's not revealed, more information about that we're going to get in verse 3. Go ahead, Vicky.
Well, I was just wanted to offer the maybe additional dimension to that those two interpretations, they don't contradict each other. They don't, because, for example, if you put on tefillin every day, I mean, you know better than I do, but you probably with time, with exercising that mitzvah, you feel revelation every time more and more and more. So in that way, they kind of connected those two interpretations, because we do desire revelation, but through the mitzvah we can also achieve it. So it's not separate.
Okay, I'm going to have to disagree with you because not because you're wrong, but because there has to be disagreement. There has to be some tension here. In other words, I do want to show that what the Hasidic philosophy is doing is different. It's introducing a different dimension. And I'm going to say, I mentioned tefillin, but any mitzvah, you light Shabbos candles. It's the same concept, any mitzvah. Now, you're right that if you do the mitzvah properly, you're also going to understand and you're also going to feel connected to God. You're right.
With intention.
With intention, you're right. But according to Chabad philosophy, that's not the essence. That's the cherry on the top. That's the wine. In other words, Chabad has, in Tanya, for example, there are a few chapters, chapter 36, chapter 38, chapter 39, which discuss this concept. What's more important, the attention or the action? Is it the wine or is it the action? Is it the feeling or is it the action? Now you're going to say, well, you can do both. I agree you can do both. But when you do both, the question is, but what exactly is creating that essential bond? Is it the fact that I'm mindful of the connection? Is that what does it? Is it the fact that I feel connected? Is that what does it? When I eat the matzah, is the fact that what makes that connection? The fact that I feel the freedom, if my head is not spinning from the second cup of wine, right? Is it the fact that I feel it, or is it the fact that I'm doing it in the physical sense? Now, there are many different schools of thought. Pre-Hasidism, people think that even the mitzvah is just ritual, to just remind you of the intention, and the whole purpose of the mitzvah is to put you in the proper frame of mind. But Chabad philosophy rejects that outright and says, no, the essence is the action. And more information about that we'll get in verse 3. So I agree with you. It's wonderful to have prophecy. It's wonderful to have action. But Rabbi Shneur Zalman is going to say, no, what you really want, everything that the Malbim is telling us, Malbim lived after Rabbi Shneur Zalman, but you see what I'm saying? The Malbim is talking about a frame of mind where the mitzvah, he doesn't really, I'm not going to say he's arguing. He's not talking about mitzvah. He's talking about a different dimension. He's talking about the spiritual connection of God. You have understanding, you have prophecy. One is better than the other. I'm making it a conflict. It's not, the Malbim is not really addressing the physical mitzvah. But when you read this verse, and the Malbim says, what does the soul really want? Says the Malbim, the soul wants prophecy. The soul wants to feel connected to God. What does Rabbi Shneur Zalman say? Rabbi Shneur Zalman says, the soul doesn't want to feel connected to God. The soul wants to be connected to God. And how you become connected to God? Not because I understand that experience, because my understanding is limited. Even my soul cannot comprehend the infinity of God. And only when the soul descends into this world and as a physical mitzvah could the soul experience the essence. Now everything is flipped on its head, because traditional Judaism tells you, you work for 70 years, for 80 years, for 120 years in this physical world, so that when you go to heaven, you will be rewarded and you'll get to understand, you'll get rewarded by understanding the secrets of God. So the whole experience of life here is so that we can enjoy the pleasure of God in heaven. That's traditional Judaism. Chabad, based on the Kabbalah, says no. When the soul is in heaven for thousands of years waiting to descend, all it's yearning for is like, I have enough wine, I have enough candy, I have enough pleasure. When am I going to connect to the essence of God? And according to the Chabad philosophy, the soul in heaven yearns and says, I want to come down. Why? It's not fun. It's painful. There are experiences that are traumatic spiritually. The world is a very difficult place. But the world is a place where you can get to the essence of God through a physical mitzvah. So now everything is flipped on its head. What do we really want? So other perspectives say we want to be in heaven. We have to be in earth. So we have to go to work. We have to be in earth so we can earn enough in our spiritual savings account so we can then go to heaven, right? So it's a very big difference of what is the essence? Where is the essence of God present? Is the essence of God present in the wine? Or is in the essence of God present? Wine, I mean, in the understanding, in the pleasure that comes from understanding and experience? Or is the essence of God found when you bond in a physical sense? And that's why Chabad will stop a Jew on the street and say, put on tefillin. The guy doesn't know what tefillin is. He doesn't know what God is. Doesn't matter, do it. Stop a lady, say want to light Shabbos candles. First give him a lecture. First say, well, Shabbat, God created the world. No, do the mitzvah, then we'll talk. right? It's not a mistake. It's not just a marketing ploy. It comes from a deep philosophy which says that the deepest connection comes from the physical connection. Now, does it mean you don't have to understand you don't need wine? No, you need wine. You need to have the kavanah of the mitzvah, you need the intention, but the essence is the mitzvah. And if you want more information about that, come back next week where we're going to elaborate on what the fragrance is and what the oil. And I told you that the oil and the fragrance went together because they put the fragrance in the oil. But there's a difference between the fragrance and the oil, as he will explain, and I'll give you the preview. The fragrance is the spiritual connection. The actual oil, the physical, tangible oil, is the physical mitzvah. But for that, you have to come back next week. So to summarize, let's go back to the verses so we don't get too disconnected, too carried away. To summarize, the young woman says, Yishakeni, she says, kiss me from the kisses of your mouth because your love is better than wine. And because of the fragrance of your goodly oils, in other words, I smell you, but I smell you. I see you right here, but I want a kiss. What is the kiss? Oh, that's the question. What is the kiss? So the Malbim would say the kiss is prophecy. Rabbi Shneur Zalman says the kiss is the physical mitzvah. Okay, now that's poetic. Now we're talking. So this is the story in short. This has been fun for me as usual. Thank you for joining. And we're just beginning the journey. So it's only going to get better from here.
Rabbi, I don't know if this complicates it too much, but is there a connection with the idea of when we're yearning for something physical, it's because we want to release the sparks in it?
Oh, so that's the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that when a person, he quotes a verse from Psalms that says, "Re'evim gam tzmeim," they're hungry and thirsty and their soul yearns, which simply means that people are lost in the desert, they're hungry and they're thirsty and their soul yearns for food. That's a simple interpretation. And the verse continues that God saves them and they go and they thank God. But Baal Shem Tov says, no. Baal Shem Tov says, "Re'evim gam tzmeim," when a person is hungry and thirsty, why am I hungry and thirsty? Not only because my body wants the physical nourishment and the physical calories, that too. But deeper is my soul wants the spark of God that's within it. So what you get from that teaching is when you want something, understand that there are multiple layers of desire. And when I want something, I think I want it for a certain reason, but simultaneously there's a deeper yearning. And sometimes I want something and I don't even know why I want it. And therefore, if I don't understand the deeper yearning, I may use it in the wrong way and then be disappointed that it's actually not, it's not quenching my yearning. It's not quenching my thirst. So this is related. I think this is at least what we said about the general underlying song. I think that's broader. I think that's more general. In general, the concept of yearning, the concept that I want something, I need something, I'm never satisfied. So the Baal Shem Tov is talking about something specific. If I'm hungry, it's because I need the spark of God that's within this slice of bread. Okay, so that's one dimension. But there's a deeper dimension. The fact that I want. There's a deep yearning in the universe. There's a deep yearning in the universe. And what is that yearning? What do I want? Everybody wants something. Stop. I guarantee you, if you stopped at all 7.5 billion people in the world and say, do you want anything? Most people are going to say yes. And if they don't, they're not being honest. Or if they don't, that's the tragedy because they're too happy. What's the word I'm looking for? They're too
Content.
They're too content. They can't grow. But what the Kabbalah is saying, everybody wants something. You know why? By the way, you go to the Stanford Nature Center. The cow is eating grass. It's very comfortable. It's not yearning. Or at least that I know of. I can't speak for the cows. But the point here is, the truth of the matter is, no, the cows are also yearning. The soul of everything is yearning. The point here is that the underlying yearning, what I really want is the connection to spirituality. And within that, what do I really want? And that's where you have a difference between the traditional Judaism, I don't want to say traditional, the conventional interpretation, and what the Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy add. And the Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy add counterintuitively that the essence of God is present in the action, in the physical. Now, virtually every religion, including certain streams of Judaism, would say, no, the whole purpose of religion is to become spiritual. And Chabad says, no, physical and spiritual, they're both nice, they're both not the essence. The purpose is to connect to the essence of God. The way you do that, you need some wine, you need some spiritual awareness, but you also need some of the kiss. And what's the kiss? You need the fragrance, which is like the wine, and you need the kiss. You need the actual connection. And what's the actual connection? The actual connection is the physical mitzvah. I'll give you a metaphor. It's not a perfect metaphor, but it's okay metaphor. I got the metaphor when we did the Tanya through the JLI. When the JLI did the Tanya, it was called, Vicky must have been there. Vicky was certainly there. It was called, I think you were there. If not, you did it in Virginia. It was called, I don't know, Roadmap of the Soul or something like that. And they did a metaphor. And the metaphor works for me because I love coffee. So I love coffee. Then there's two people. One other person also loves coffee. So we get together every morning and we reminisce and we talk about how delicious coffee is. But we don't drink any coffee. But we connect in a very deep way because we understand each other. And I know what coffee is, and you know what coffee is, and you yearn for it, and I yearn for it. And we connect and we have a very deep relationship. Somebody else doesn't care for coffee. But I say, do me a favor. I have a broken leg. Go buy me a coffee. That person goes and buys me a coffee and I drink my coffee. Okay? So now, who is more connected to me? The guy who can understand and feel how I feel, or the guy who can give me a coffee? Okay, it's not a perfect connection. It's not a perfect metaphor, but you see in some sense what that metaphor is saying is the feeling is less important than the action. But it's not a perfect metaphor because we want the kiss. We want the essence. I don't think I'm connecting to the essence of the guy who's bringing me the coffee. It's not a perfect metaphor, but it's weaning us away from the concept that because we feel connected, that means we are connected. The spiritual has certain qualities, the physical has certain qualities. Both are not the essence of God. Both are tools that could connect us to God. But between the two, one is wine, one is fragrance, and one is the intimacy, and one is the kiss. And Chabad philosophy is unequivocal that the physical action, consistent with the will of the Torah, you do a mitzvah, that's the intimacy, that's the kiss. Say, I don't feel it. Okay, so you don't have wine. You want to feel it, go drink wine. But if you go smell the fragrance of your lover. But smelling the fragrance of the lover doesn't mean there's an intimate bond. And in other words, doesn't mean that you got the essence, that you really connected to that you had a intimate unity. Your essence and their essence become one. When does that happen? That happens through the physical. You may not feel it. Yeah, but feeling is different. Feeling is wine. Which one is better? Is the wine better, or is your love better? Is the kiss better? Well, we know what the woman in this song thinks. She says, better than wine is your love. Better than your fragrance is the oil. The tangible over the experience. Why? Which one is more fun? The wine is more fun. But where do you get the essence? So where does the soul want to be? Does the soul want prophecy go to heaven, or does the soul in heaven want to come down to earth? Everything is upside down. So this gets a little confusing, but it keeps it interesting. So that's good.
Yeah, that's
Rabbi, I'm sorry.
a question too, because in this world, we the only thing that's accessible, the main thing that's accessible is action.
Right.
And
We have some wine, but the model is right. We have intelligence, but not prophecy. You're not really going to connect in a deep way. There's limitations. There's the wall. There's the barrier. But again, I'm not saying Chabad philosophy is about loving God and awareness. You want the wine. She's not saying she doesn't want. You're going to see how many times wine is mentioned in this verse. We want wine. We want a multifaceted relationship. Don't get me wrong. We're not saying action. We're not robotic. We're not saying we just want action. There's a multifaceted relationship. That's why there's 8 chapters. And this person is deeply in love and deeply affected. But what's the essence? That's the question. Where do you really connect? Is it when I feel connected? Or is it when I connect in a physical level? And you think about your own relationship. Sometimes when the person does something for you, it could connect deeper than connecting emotionally, right? If you think about it, it's not a perfect metaphor, but that's possible. And spiritually, it's true, because spiritually, we're trained to think, because of influence of other religions, that spirituality is closer to the infinity of God than the physical. And Chabad philosophy says, no, both the physical and the spiritual don't have the tools to connect you to the infinite, because spirituality is not infinity. And the gap between the physical and infinity is just as great as the gap between the spiritual and infinity. And Rabbi Shneur Zalman's example, what's closer to infinity, 1 or a billion? The answer, They're both the same. They're both, the distance is both in the same. One is a billion, but a billion is a finite number. Infinity is a total different type of thing. So spirituality is a billion, physicality is one. Which one is closer to God? They both don't get you there. The only way you get connected to God is on God's terms. When God says, if you show up at this time in this place and do this action, I'm going to be there. That's when we can connect. Oh, that's the kiss. That's the oil. Not as exciting as wine, but that's the connection. Go ahead. Amy, did you want to ask something, or was it somebody else?
Yes, actually, I had a quick question. I mean,
You
so
never
so
know.
this is.
You never
Can
know.
you hear me?
It's a quick question or a quick answer.
Hopefully, a quick answer, and it's a quick
It's not the
question,
same
but I
thing
don't
at
know.
all. Sometimes the quick questions take more time to answer than the long answers.
That's true. So the question is that if I mean, in a way, this is beautiful, but in another way, it's sad and painful, because basically our souls end up spending eternity then never really connecting, except for, God willing, the 120 years that we're on Earth.
Okay, so
And then the rest of the time is just
right here.
a time of,
Amy, I'm going to stop you right here before we even continue. You
Yeah.
said it's very painful. What did you start with? You said it's very painful.
I think it's beautiful while we're here on Earth, but it sounds like it's very sad that the rest of eternity we're yearning for something we can't have.
I want to stop you for a second. The first thing I want to say is that, of course, it's sad. Love is sad. Love is pain. Love is longing. Go to any library and pick up any book of romance. It's sad. Cholat ahava, it's love sick. In Hebrew, it's in this verse. Cholat ahava, it's love sick. Love is painful. Love is painful because love is a desire to connect to somebody else, and ultimately connecting to somebody else, transcending the self, is tricky business. So I agree with you. It's not a happy story. It's a love story, but it's a meaningful story. That I agree with you. But I think your real concern is, what happens after I die? Could my soul connect to the essence of God? The answer is that, unlike the love story in this physical world, where you can have a moment of intimacy, and then my lover gets on the plane and goes to Indonesia, and I never see the person again. In the spiritual sense, the spirituality is eternal. So once the soul descends into this world and does a physical mitzvah, that bond is eternal. So then the soul goes back to heaven, and it has the wine and the essence. You see what I'm saying? So in that sense, the story with the soul and God differs from the physical sense. In the physical sense, I have the intimacy for a moment, and I don't always, and it's not going to continue. But in the spiritual sense, it's the opposite. And therefore, the verses are going to continue, and you will see that the conversation in verse 3, the conversation between, therefore all the other maidens love you. Who are the other maidens? So I'm spilling too much. I'm giving you a preview. You're not going to come back next week. But according to the Chabad philosophy, the maidens are the souls that never descended into this earth. So the real distinction is not between the soul who was in this earth and goes back to heaven. It's the distinction between the souls who never came down yet and the souls who were once down here. Once you came down, once you did a mitzvah, you're in a total category of your own. You have that intimacy with God. Now the question is, do you feel it? How much wine are you going to drink to make it tasty? But if that's your concern, I think we'll further address that. But that's the big distinction. The big distinction is, as Rabbi Shneur Zalman says in Tanya, when you do a sin is physical. The sin is never eternal. But the unity, the moment, the kiss that happens with God is eternal. Now down here, because we're under the time and space, we don't feel that it's eternal. But once the soul goes back up to heaven, we transcend time. Now we sense that unity, that intimacy with God is eternal. So when my soul goes back to heaven, it benefits from it stays in that level of the eternal kiss that happened by doing one mitzvah. In this world, it's not eternal. I don't sense it as eternal because we're under time. But once we transcend time, once you connect to the infinite, remember, once you connect to the infinite, the whole idea of time falls apart, falls down and breaks down. So that's the story in short. I will elaborate next week, Amy. I apologize. One more question. I have 2 minutes, and then I have to hit the road because my daughter Dvoraleah is waiting for me, and we have to get ready for Shabbat. And soon we have to actually taste the foods of Shabbat as we discussed. Go ahead.
Question.
Yeah.
The kiss. Could the kiss from the be interpreted as death?
As what?
Death.
Oh, so that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't think about that. But the short
Listen,
answer is,
I'm short of time though, so make it short.
the short answer is, I don't know. No, the short answer is that yes, in the Torah, when Moses dies, when Miriam dies, when Aaron dies, it's by a kiss.
Oh,
Why? Yeah, that's what it says. Al pi Hashem. Moses died in the mouth of God. What's the mouth of God? Rashi says, b'neshika, by a kiss. Why? So if I'm the Malvim, I say very simple. What is the kiss? The kiss is that the soul feels now it gets its intimacy with God. Now it says prophecy, because that barrier, which is the physical body, it does not allow us to sense the reality of God, that falls apart at the moment of death. Now, when I die, cannot be described completely as a kiss, because for my soul, because my soul is not like Moses' soul or Miriam's soul, so my soul is also connected to the physical world. So for my soul, as I think we discussed in the course, my soul is bittersweet. It's a kiss, but it's not only a kiss. So for my soul, it's bittersweet. But for the soul of the righteous, for the soul of Miriam, for the soul of Moses, soul of Aaron, it's not bittersweet. It's sweet. It's a kiss. It gets that intimacy with God, a prophecy of awareness, or according to what Chabad is saying and what Amy added, it now senses that the kiss that it achieved through this world. Depending on which school of thought you're reading about, that's how I would define it. So the short answer is that we just touched upon important things. We need to elaborate upon this. Amy, your question is very important. We need to elaborate. The good news is that verse 3 elaborates upon it, and Rabbi Shneur Zalman talks about it, and in many places. So we have a lot of work to do. So in the meantime, be in love, and love is painful, but love is also rewarding. So we sing it in the song Friday afternoon, one of the most beautiful songs in all of the liturgy, written by a Kabbalist. Nafshi cholata havatecha, my soul is lovesick for you, and it's a play on a verse that comes from this book, the Song of Songs. Don't be afraid of love, even though it is painful, but ultimately that tension creates the meaning and the connection and the unity, which will heal the love. Continuing that song. Nafshi cholata havatecha, my soul is lovesick for you. Sick is pain. Sick is pain. But we continue. Ana el narafana la, please God, heal my soul, which is lovesick. How? B'harot lanoam zivecha, when you show her, the soul, the sweetness of your ray. So in other words, we want the wine, we want the unity, we want the yearning, we want to be able to sense the unity that comes through the kiss. There's so much more to say. Unfortunately, we hit the hard deadline. So I really, really appreciate this, because this is tremendously rewarding for me. Very painful to leave, I have to be honest, but that's part of love, that when you really love something, it's painful to stop, but we'll be back, so don't worry about it.
Could we just have a little melody?